Thank you. And thank you for the organizers for setting up such a wonderful opportunity for people of many countries to be together. I'd like to begin inviting you to look at the pictures, and the people that are sitting up here, you might even like turning your chairs around to see the feast of images on the screen. I will begin with the words of a young woman in Iraq who had the opportunity to go to 2 different Hizmet schools there, both in high school and a university. And she said, "If one of the graduates of our schools were president of Iraq, this country would be much better." The girls in the room started giggling, but it was wonderful to hear a statement like that. I am using the United Nations 2013 fact sheet about situations in Iraq for women and girls. And according to that fact sheet, 33% of the women in Iraq do not believe that women should be involved in politics at all. According to that fact sheet, 15% of the women in Iraq do not think that women should have the right to vote. So it is extremely significant that young women in the Hizmet schools can dream of themselves as president, and they not only dream, but they're now beginning to be doctors, engineers, fine leaders in that country, which so much needs good leadership. In northern Iraq, between 150 and 180,000 people were killed in the 1980s. Almost all of them were Kurdish, and in very many areas, all of the men of military age were killed, leaving widows, leaving children. Needless to say, there is much trauma when you have seen that much violence around you. So 6 years after these terrible massacres of people in northern Iraq, Turkish educators went there and started the first Turkish school. It was 16 students in a home at that time. Wonderfully, there are now 32 Turkish schools in different parts of Iraq, and my host would only take me to see the Hizmet schools in northern Iraq in the safe area, but there are 12 of these schools in the southern area of Iraq, in Baghdad, in Basra, in areas where we frequently hear of bombing and violence, and my congratulation to the courage of the Turkish educators who are willing to work in those areas of Iraq. In my 3 summers, not whole summers, but part of the summer in Iraq in 2010, 2011, and 2012, I had the opportunity to interview over 100 people, from high ministers in the Department of Education, to principals, to business people, to teachers, to parents, to students. And I consistently heard about the opportunities that the Hizmet schools were giving to young people. After the first summer, I wanted to really concentrate on women's opportunities for education. So in that second summer, Sister Patricia Madigan in Australia, who works extensively with the Hizmet movement there, and I was so happy to follow the presentation this morning a little bit about the Hizmet movement in Australia. So Sister Patricia Madigan from Australia and I met in Iraq, and we interviewed in 29 families, and we got a substantial amount of information in the families. First of all, I would like to mention that the United Nations fact sheet says twice as many women as men are illiterate in Iraq. It is wonderful to see that the Fetsalar Institution, which is the name of the Turkish group sponsoring the schools, particularly has women's schools for the middle school and the high school age. And that has traditionally been when women would drop out of school or get married. Generally speaking, the grandmothers or the great aunts that we interviewed only had 2 or 3 years of education. Sometimes they were in school until they were 12 years old. Usually, the mothers had a little bit more, but again and again, the mothers would say things like, family members say it's a shame for girls to go to school, and we were encouraged to stay home to help caring for the animals, to help with work on the farm, to help with housework, and to get married very early. The young women that we were interviewing in the Hizmet schools, or who had graduated from the Hizmet schools, had a high level of self-confidence. I want to mention that the UN study says that less than 10% of Iraqi women participate in public organizations. That could be social organizations, that could be labor unions, that could be other types of clubs within Iraq. Again and again, the young women in the Hizmet schools would talk about their experience in the science club, the math club, the art club, their experience in the charity club, going out to help the disadvantaged within the city. These young women have a high sense of civic engagement, and it really seems that as they are more integrated in society with their club experience, that they will make a difference in that only 10% of women in Iraq active in the public sphere. I want to mention, and perhaps you can realize that as you see the pictures, that we interviewed Sunni Muslims, Armenian Christians, Shia Muslims, Chaldean Catholic Christians, Mandean, a wide variety of religious groups, and we also interviewed a wide variety of language groups: Turkmen, Kurds, Arabs, Syriani people. And they would often tell us, we didn't associate with the others. We feared or we distrusted the other. And I want you to realize that the Kirkuk area is one of the most valuable places for oil in the whole world. And so there has been great concern. Will the Kurdish people, will the Turkmen people, will the Arab people control this very rich oil land? I could read you many delightful stories of what the women said. One of my favorite was a girl going to Nilofer school. I have been with her for 3 summers, and she says, "This is a girls' school. Girls can do everything that they want to do." And it's marvelous to see that level of self-confidence. Another young woman who so impressed me saw her Kurdish relatives killed again and again by the Central Arab government. She took me to the prison where her relatives had been tortured, and she said the best thing in her life was when in the Hizmet schools she learned not to hate. She said hatred is a prison. So she is a very good example of the virtues that students learn in Hizmet schools: forgiveness, reconciliation, building unity, being altruistic. The Shared Alliance website talks about Mr. Gulen not only promoting women's education, but encouraging women to be judges and to enter into the political sphere. How wonderful this is to encourage females as well as males to have a positive impact on society. I'd like to close by reading from the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan. "There is no tool for development more effective than the empowerment of women. No policy is as likely to raise economic productivity or to reduce infant and maternal mortality. No other policy is as sure to improve nutrition or to influence education for the next generation. And I would also venture to say that no policy is more important in preventing conflict or in achieving reconciliation after a conflict has ended." I want you to know that what I have presented was not actually developed to be a presentation. It was developed as a photography exhibit. I began as an art teacher, and if any of you would like information on having the exhibit of photographs and images of the women, it is available, and I have some flyers that have information on that. Thank you for your wonderful attendance.